Deputy Clare Daly.
I too would like to unreservedly condemn the appalling murder of 17 French citizens last week, an act for which there is no justification whatsoever, an absolutely indefensible act. But as other deputies have said, it was sadly not the only act of indefensible violence that took place last week, namely the slaughter in the most vicious circumstances of 2,000 African citizens by Boko Haram. It's sadly not the only act of indefensible violence carried out against journalists or artists, not least the 12 journalists murdered by the Israeli Defence Forces in Gaza last year. People whom the Israeli Defence Foreign Minister described as terrorists who hold cameras and notebooks. Now, I don't recall any outcry or demands for a defence of free speech and a defence of democracy in those instances. And in fact, I would take it as quite an affront that some of those who gathered on the boulevards of France were responsible for those actions and yet painted themselves as being on the side of the French people and the victims of that atrocity. And I think it's very important that in the time that we have here, and if we're really to genuinely mourn the victims of the horrific murders in France, then we have a responsibility to respond in a balanced way. And to do that, there's no point in decrying the rise of Islamic extremism and saying nothing about the circumstances that gave rise to that. There's no point in saying nothing about the fact that the US invasion of Afghanistan was one of the key motivators of where these groups originated from in the first place. And I think I'd like to quote from a US Air Force major who, to me, portrayed the issue a lot better than I could. And he said, "When I was in Iraq, we routinely handled foreign fighters who we would capture. In their eyes, they see us as not living up to the ideals that we have subscribed to. You know, we say that we represent freedom, liberty and justice. But when we torture people, we're not living up to those ideals. And it's a huge incentive for them to join Al-Qaeda." You also have to kind of put this in the context of Arab culture and Muslim culture and how important shame, the role of shame is in that culture. And when we torture people, we bring a tremendous amount of shame on them. And so it is a huge motivator for these people to join Al-Qaeda. And the truth is that the people in these countries who are on the receiving end of the so-called war on terror, to those people, those actions are in and of themselves a war on terror. And I do think that we need to be balanced and measured in our reply. I believe in freedom of expression and human rights, which is why I would equally condemn the use by President Obama of the Espionage Act, for example. And I think we have to be very careful in not responding in a knee-jerk reaction with greater state powers to control liberty. And I would, make the point that these perpetrators of this crime were known to the surveillance forces, so surveillance in and of itself is no solution. In actual fact, what will make the world a better and safer place is non-intervention.